Having served in the Air Force in the early 60s, the thought of going to Vietnam on vacation was not high on my list. But it was an eye-opening trip. The Vietnamese warmly welcome Americans. We started in Hanoi, an old, smoggy city. The traffic was insane. Wall-to-wall motorbikes and very few traffic lights. They tell you to just walk across the street at a steady pace and they'll swerve around you. And that was true most of the time. The transportation here is done mostly on bike or motorbike.
You wouldn't believe the variety of goods that were transported on foot, bicycle, or motorbikes.
This is the lake in downtown Hanoi where John McCain was captured. The Hanoi Hilton prison is now a museum, but some of the exhibits are really questionable. We left Hanoi and headed off to the legendary Ha Long Bay, designated as a natural heritage site by the UN. It consists of 3,000 limestone monoliths and islands, some of which have caves and caverns. We boarded our junk for an overnight stay and headed out into the bay. The islands rose from the mist like mysterious monsters. From Hanoi, we flew down the coast to the city of Hue. The citadel was the imperial capital during the French colonial period. It was the scene of some of the heaviest fighting during the Tet Offensive and has almost completely been rebuilt. From Da Nang, we flew to Nha Trang, a beautiful coastal resort. Back in Nha Trang, we went to a local market and walked around. They had everything you could imagine for sale. Our last stop in Vietnam was Ho Chi Minh City, which most people still call Saigon. The traffic here was even worse than in Hanoi.
Kentucky Fried Chicken was popular because they thought the colonel looked like Ho Chi Minh.
The War Remnants Museum is housed in the former U.S. Information Agency building. It used to be called the War Crimes Museum, but they changed the name to attract more American tourists. Inside is a great deal of propaganda, much of which is highly distorted. The Cu Chi tunnels were used to smuggle and house troops from the north to attack Saigon. The entrances to the tunnels were well camouflaged and designed for the smaller Vietnamese frame. The 3-foot-high tunnels were a problem for American soldiers, but they've enlarged some of them for the tourists. After an hour's ride from Saigon, we reached the Mekong Delta. We boarded a boat and passed some of the river commerce and the fishing boats that were lined up. Then it was into one of the canals where we saw where the people lived and worked. From Saigon, we flew to Siem Reap, Cambodia, the nearest city to Angkor Wat.
Not adventurous enough to try food on the streets? Not to worry. The restaurants were plentiful, tasty, reasonable, and even the beer was good. We visited a small local market outside of Siem Reap. You could get fish, produce, and even snails. Everything was fresh.
The village had a beautiful Buddhist temple, but the homes themselves were very poor. Angkor Wat and Angkor Thom were the Khmer capitals in the 12th and 13th centuries. Today they're just historic ruins, but very beautiful. They are restoring the carved sandstone story walls, which tell the history and legends of the lost civilization. We went to see a classical Cambodian dance show and a shadow puppet show. The Pol Pot Khmer Rouge regime brought death to over 2 million of its own people. There are chilling memorials to the victims at many of the atrocity sites in Cambodia.